Girls, in today's video, I'm going to tell you a story that will blow your mind. I suspect my neighbor is having an affair with a police officer, and you won't believe what I discovered while watching from my window. Don't miss this video because the ending is simply surprising. Hi, I'm Ruth, and every week on this channel, I bring you the hottest gossip from my neighborhood. You know those stories you only discover by peeking through the crack in the curtain? Well, I'll tell you all about it here. So, if you enjoy good gossip like I do, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel to be notified whenever I bring a new story, and leave a comment telling me what you think of this whole situation. As always, I'll leave a little message for you to help our channel. I've pinned some incredible ebooks in the first comment that can transform your life. From health, wellness, and relationship tips to faith and spirituality. Just click the link I pinned in the comments to download and help our channel grow. Now let's get to the point, because this story will mess with your head as much as it messed with mine. I've seen a little bit of everything in my life, but this situation left me completely perplexed. It all started about 3 weeks ago, on one of those rainy Thursdays that makes you want to stay home, drinking tea and watching TV. The sky was heavy with dark clouds, and it was drizzling a fine drizzle that gave everything a melancholy look. You know how it is? I was in my kitchen preparing my afternoon tea. You know how it is, right? At 67, we have our sacred routines, and my 3 o'clock tea is more punctual than a television show. I was there, stirring the spoon in my cup, when I heard a car pull up right in front of Maria's house, my neighbor from the blue house. The engine sound was different from the cars that normally pass by our street. It was more powerful, more imposing, you know? The kind that makes you turn your head to see which car it is. Let me explain who this Maria is so you can understand why I was so intrigued by the whole situation. Maria is a woman of about 42 or 43. Very beautiful, by the way. She has that brown hair with golden highlights, always well-groomed, expressive green eyes, and a figure any woman our age would envy. She's been married for over 15 years to Roberto, an accountant who works in an office downtown. Roberto is a good, hard-working man, the kind of husband every woman would love. Punctual, responsible, affectionate with his wife, and always polite to me when we meet on the street. He leaves for work sharp every day at 7 in the morning, driving that silver Honda Civic they bought about 5 years ago. He's a man of routine, work, home, family. On weekends, he enjoys gardening, watching football on TV, and barbecuing in the backyard. Maria has always seemed like an exemplary wife to me. She stays home tending to the garden. And what a beautiful garden they have, full of roses, daisies, and hydrangeas that look beautiful in spring. She also does the housework and cooks very well. I've smelled the delicious aroma of her food several times. She's one of those organized women who keeps the house always spotless, the clothes always hanging out neatly, and the lawn always mowed. They always seemed like a happy, stable couple to me. The kind you look at and think, I'm glad there are still people who take marriage seriously. I never saw an argument, never heard a fight, never sensed tension between them. They lived a normal, peaceful life without many new developments or surprises. But that day, when I peeked through the kitchen curtain, and yes, girls, I confess I'm truly curious. There's no way around it. At 67, we're past the stage of pretending we don't care about other people's lives. I saw a scene that intrigued me. A tall, well-dressed man was getting out of a police car. It wasn't a regular car. It was one of those unmarked cars investigators use. Black, tinted windows, that air of seriousness only police cars have. He wasn't in uniform, but you could tell he was a police officer by his posture, the way he walked. You know? That imposing, confident presence only they have after years of dealing with complicated situations. Let me describe this man better for you, because details are important in this story. He must have been in his 50s, maybe early 50s, the kind of man who gets more attractive with age. His hair was graying on the sides, neatly cut, and styled with gel in an elegant style. He had an athletic build, well-groomed, and you could tell he exercised regularly. His posture was erect, his shoulders broad, and he had that masculine look that some women find irresistible. He wore casual yet elegant clothes, neatly pressed dark jeans, a light blue long-sleeved dress shirt, and polished black dress shoes. A discreet gold chain hung around his neck, and a watch that was clearly expensive even from a distance. He was definitely no ordinary man. He was the kind who turned heads wherever he went, who made women turn their heads on the street. He walked straight to Maria's door with sure steps, as if he knew the way well. He rang the doorbell naturally, without the hesitation of someone visiting for the first time. He stood there waiting, straightening his shirt, running his hand through his hair, as if trying to look presentable. Within seconds, Maria opened the door, and girls, you should have seen her face. That's when I had my first shock. She looked completely different from usual. Instead of the simple home clothes she always wears when she's at home, she was all dressed up, as if she'd prepared herself especially for this visit. She wore a floral dress I'd never seen before, a delicate print in shades of pink and green, with a subtle yet elegant neckline, and a knee-length skirt that showcased her shapely legs. Her hair was loose and shiny. I could tell she'd curled it with a curling iron, because it had those perfect curls that only come out when we've done our best. And makeup! Maria was wearing makeup on a Thursday afternoon, meant to stay home. Pink lipstick, mascara, even blush on her cheeks. For a woman who normally wears a ponytail and a bare face indoors, this was suspicious to say the least. What caught my attention most was her smile. It wasn't the polite smile we give to neighbors or acquaintances. It was a smile, how can I say it? Radiant, genuine, the kind we only give when we're truly happy to see someone. Her eyes shone in a way I hadn't seen in a long time, not even when Roberto came home from work. They greeted each other at the door, and I swear to God, I saw her touch his arm in a way too tender to be mere friendship. It was a lingering, intimate touch, as if she wanted to feel the texture of his shirt, the firmness of the muscle beneath the fabric. He smiled back, a warm smile, and placed his hand on her shoulder as he shook hands. Their body language was unmistakable. You know how it is, women have a sixth sense for these things. We can tell when there's chemistry between two people, when there's an intimacy that goes beyond ordinary friendship. And there, in that doorway, something was happening that was definitely not normal. They stood talking in the doorway for about 2 minutes, she gesturing animatedly, he listening attentively and nodding. Every now and then she laughed, a loud, joyful, musical laugh, and placed her hand on her chest, that gesture women make when they're nervous or emotional. Then he walked into the house and I stood there, completely glued to the curtain, trying to process what I'd just seen. Roberto hadn't gotten home from work yet. He never gets home before 6:30, he's punctual as clockwork. So they were alone inside. And girls, you won't believe it, they were there for almost 3 hours. 3 whole hours. What kind of visit lasts 3 hours on a Thursday afternoon when the husband is away working? During this time, I confess I couldn't leave the window. It was stronger than me. I made my tea, grabbed some coconut cookies I'd made that morning, brought a cushion to make myself more comfortable on the kitchen chair, and settled in there as if it were my workstation. Their house was angled so I could see the living room, part of the kitchen, and the backyard. Occasionally, I saw the living room curtains move, lights flicker on and off, shadows passing from one room to another, but nothing that gave me any real clue as to what was really going on inside. At one point, around 4 o'clock, I saw a light come on in what I knew was their room. Their room. Girls. My heart sank. What reason would a man have to go into a married woman's room on a Thursday afternoon? The light stayed on for about 20 minutes, then went out. Then I saw movement in the kitchen, as if they were preparing something, maybe a snack, a cup of coffee. The domestic routine of an intimate couple, you know. Around 5 o'clock, I heard music coming from their house. Soft, romantic music, the kind played on Love Radio. The volume was low, but since our street is quiet and the windows were open against the heat, I could hear it perfectly. Romantic music on a Thursday afternoon, with a male guest, while the husband is at work? By this point, I was absolutely certain something very serious was going on. Around 5:30 in the afternoon, I finally saw the police officer coming out the front door. He was as calm and confident as when he arrived, but now there was something different in the air. His shirt was a little more wrinkled, his hair no longer as perfectly combed as when he arrived. Maria walked him to the gate. And girls, pay attention to this detail because it's crucial to understanding the whole situation. She also looked slightly different. Her dress was a little disheveled, her hair no longer in its perfect curls. It looked a bit messy, as if she'd run her hand through it several times or had been lying down. They stood there talking at the gate for about 5 minutes, she gesturing a lot, he listening and nodding. The conversation felt intimate, personal, as if they were discussing something important. Every now and then she glanced around as if worried someone might see them talking. Exactly the kind of behavior people with something to hide display. When they said goodbye, and pay close attention to this detail, girls, because it was what gave me absolute certainty that my suspicion was correct. She hugged him, but it wasn't a regular hug, one of friendship or courtesy. It was a long, tight hug, the kind that makes you think. She put her arms around his neck. He wrapped his hands around her waist, and they stayed like that for at least 10 seconds. When they parted, he cupped her face with both hands for a moment, as if to imprint the moment on her memory. She closed her eyes and sighed. It was such an intimate scene, so emotionally charged, that I felt almost embarrassed to be watching. He got in the car, took one last look at her, waved through the window and drove away. Maria stood there at the gate for another 2 minutes, staring in the direction the car had gone, a dreamy expression on her face, as if reliving special moments. As soon as he disappeared from sight, she ran home. And guess what happened? In less than 10 minutes, Roberto arrived home from work. His punctuality was almost miraculous, or Maria knew exactly what time he would arrive, and had calculated everything down to the last detail. When Roberto parked the Honda in the garage, Maria was already at the door waiting for him. But now, and this is another crucial detail in the story, she looked completely different again. The floral dress was gone, replaced by a simple t-shirt and faded denim shorts. Her hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, with no trace of the elaborate makeup she'd applied hours before. She welcomed him like an exemplary wife, with a kiss on the cheek, asked how his day had been, and helped carry his briefcase. Everything was very normal, very natural, as if nothing extraordinary had happened that afternoon. They walked in together, and minutes later I saw the kitchen light come on. She was probably making dinner. He might be telling her about his day at the office, the normal domestic life of a couple married for 15 years. But I was in shock, girls. My mind was racing, trying to process everything I'd seen. How had Maria managed to transform so quickly? How had she hidden all traces of that afternoon with the police officer? And most importantly, what exactly had happened during those 3 hours? That night, I couldn't sleep well, thinking about what I'd seen. I tossed and turned, replaying every detail, every gesture, every look. Could it be that Maria, that neighbor who always seemed so proper, so dedicated to marriage, was having an affair? All the evidence pointed to this. The special outfits, the elaborate makeup, the length of the visit, the romantic music, the long hug, goodbye, the quick transformation before her husband's arrival. It sounded like a movie script, but it was happening right in front of me. I thought about all the stories I'd heard about cheating, about women getting involved with other men. I always thought I could spot the signs, but Maria had completely fooled me. In 15 years of being around her, I never suspected she was capable of something like that. The next day, Friday, I woke up determined to investigate further. If what I was thinking was true, it wouldn't be an isolated incident. Extramarital affairs have patterns, routines, and recurrences. So I decided to conduct my own investigation. I set up my observation post in the kitchen early in the morning. I organized everything down to the smallest detail. Hot tea in a thermos, chocolate chip cookies, my reading glasses to better see the details, a comfortable cushion on the chair, and I even grabbed a notebook to jot down the times and events. I stayed there from 2 o'clock onward, watching every movement in Maria's house. And girls, you won't believe it. Around 2:30 in the afternoon, there he was again. The same man, the same car, the same Swiss watch punctuality. This time I was able to better observe every detail of him. The officer. By now I was certain he was an investigative officer, or a police chief, was even more elegant than the day before. He wore a navy blue polo shirt, well-cut dark jeans, expensive casual sneakers, and that same gold watch that gleamed in the sun. When he got out of the car, he straightened his shirt, ran a hand through his hair, and walked to the door with the same confidence as the day before. But this time I noticed something new. He was carrying a small, discreet bag, as if he'd brought something special for her. Maria opened the door before he even rang the bell, as if she'd been waiting behind the door, peering out the window, anxious for his arrival. And what about her outfit? Girls! She outdid herself this time. She wore a semi-sheer white blouse, the kind that reveals a hint of bra underneath, jeans that looked like they were painted on, and heeled sandals that made her legs look even longer. Her hair was loose with natural waves that swayed as she moved. Her makeup was impeccable again. Red lipstick, eyes accented with gold eyeshadow. Even her perfume could be smelled even from afar, because when she moved in the doorway, the wind carried that sweet, seductive scent. The greeting was even warmer than the day before. He kissed her cheek, but this time he lingered longer, as if he were breathing in her scent, feeling the softness of her skin. She held his hand for a few seconds longer than usual, intertwining their fingers in an intimate, affectionate way. When he handed her the bag, her eyes lit up like a child receiving a gift. She opened it immediately, right there in the doorway, and I could tell it was something small, delicate. From her reaction, a radiant smile, her hands on her chest, "Oh, how beautiful," that echoed all the way to my kitchen. It must have been something special, something romantic. She hugged him again, thanking him for the gift. And when they entered the house, I noticed she quickly closed the door and rushed to pull all the curtains in the living room almost immediately. Typical behavior of someone who wants absolute privacy, of someone who has something to hide. I was absolutely certain then. Something very serious was going on between them. A married woman doesn't welcome a man into her home with this kind of behavior, doesn't receive gifts, doesn't dress this way, unless there's a deep romantic connection. And once again, girls, they were in there for more than 3 hours. Every now and then I saw movement in the windows, shadows passing from one room to another. Around 4:30, I noticed something that made my heart race. The light in their room came on again, and this time, it stayed on for almost 40 minutes. Girls, 40 minutes in the bedroom. What kind of conversation or activity do you need? 40 minutes in a bedroom on a Friday afternoon with your husband at work. My imagination was running wild, and all the possibilities that came to mind were anything but innocent. After that, I heard that romantic song coming from their house again. But this time it was different, more intense, louder. It was one of those slow, sensual songs that play in romantic movies during the most intimate scenes. The volume was just loud enough for me to hear it perfectly from my kitchen. During these moments, I tried to focus on other activities so as not to obsess over the situation, but it was impossible. I washed some dishes, organized the spices in the cupboard, even tried to read a magazine, but my attention always returned to Maria's house. It was stronger than me. Around 5:40, I finally saw movement at the front door. The police officer left, but this time there was something different about his demeanor. He was more relaxed, more smiling, with that satisfied air of someone who had just experienced some very pleasant moments. Her polo shirt was a little wrinkled, her hair disheveled in a way that didn't seem intentional. And Maria, oh girls, Maria looked noticeably different. Her white blouse was askew, her hair completely messy, as if she'd just gotten out of bed. Her red lipstick was completely gone. They said goodbye again with that long hug, but this time I noticed something more. He whispered something in her ear that made her blush and smile like a lovesick teenager. She responded with something that made him chuckle softly, and then he gave her a quick kiss on the neck. Yes, girls, on the neck, before leaving. Minutes later, Roberto arrived, and the same miraculous transformation occurred. Maria was already dressed in homemade clothes, her hair tied back and without makeup, as if nothing had happened. On Saturday, as expected, the police officer didn't show up. Roberto was home, and they had a normal weekend. But I noticed something curious. Maria was especially affectionate with Roberto, almost overly so. She hugged him from behind while he watched TV, stroked his hair, and prepared that special lunch she usually only makes on birthdays. Was it guilt? Was she trying to make up for the betrayal by being extra affectionate with her husband? Or was it a way to disguise it, to throw off any suspicions he might have? Women who cheat sometimes do that, girls. It's a way to ease their conscience. Monday arrived and I'd been at my observation post since 2 o'clock. At 2:30 sharp, there he was again. His punctuality was impressive. This man had his life organized down to the smallest detail. This time I noticed he wasn't in his official car. It was his own car. A sleek, well-maintained gray sedan. Perhaps he was trying to be more discreet, to avoid anyone in the neighborhood noticing the police car always parked at the same house. Maria opened the door wearing a red dress she'd never seen before. Red, girls, the color of passion, of seduction. It was a fitted dress that perfectly accentuated her curves, with a neckline that revealed more than was appropriate for a married woman receiving guests. Her hair was down, and she wore large gold earrings that swung as she moved, and I could even smell her perfume from here when the wind blew in the right direction. It was a striking, seductive scent, the kind that sticks in your memory. The greeting this time was even more intimate. He placed his hand on her waist during the kiss on her cheek. She left her hand on his chest for a few seconds. When they entered, I heard her laugh out loud. A genuine, joyful, musical laugh, the kind we only have when we're truly happy and relaxed. It was at that moment that I began to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. The progressively more seductive and provocative clothes with each visit, the fixed schedule, always when Roberto was working, the length of the visits, always between 2 and 3 hours, the increasingly intimate and affectionate behavior, the romantic music, the gifts, the rapid transformation before her husband's arrival. All signs pointed to the same inevitable conclusion. Maria was having an intense and passionate affair with that police officer, and judging by the regularity and intimacy I was observing, it wasn't a recent occurrence. They already had an established routine, a perfectly functioning parallel relationship, but I still needed more concrete evidence. I needed to be absolutely certain before reaching a definitive conclusion. After all, accusing a neighbor of cheating based solely on observations could be hasty, right? So I decided to intensify my research. I started writing everything down in a notebook: arrival and departure times, what she was wearing, the length of her visits, details of their behavior. I wanted to have a complete record of everything I was seeing. On Tuesday, he arrived at 2:20, A little earlier than usual, Maria was wearing a short denim skirt and a low-cut yellow blouse. They greeted each other with a kiss on the cheek that lasted longer than usual, and this time, I could clearly see him put his hand on her back during the hug. On Wednesday, at 2:40, Maria wore a tight blue jumpsuit and even more elaborate makeup than the previous days. The greeting included a hug that lasted at least 15 seconds. On Thursday, exactly a week after I first saw this, it was 2:30 sharp. Maria was wearing an elegant black dress, as if she'd gotten ready for a romantic date. And the most shocking thing, when they embraced at the door, I swear I saw him plant a quick kiss on her cheek, right next to her ear, which made her visibly flinch. With each passing day, they grew more comfortable, more intimate, more affectionate. It was as if they were in a relationship that was evolving naturally, growing more intense over time. And Roberto, poor guy, he arrived every day at 6:30, punctual as always, completely unaware of anything. His wife greeted him as if she'd spent the entire day taking care of the house, when in reality she'd spent 3 hours in a questionable situation with another man. I was torn between outrage at the situation and morbid curiosity to find out how far this would go. It was like watching a real-life soap opera, only much more shocking because it was happening right in front of me. Girls, leave your thoughts on what happens at the end of this story in the comments, because what's ahead is breathtaking. And don't forget the materials I pinned in the first comment. There are amazing things there that can really help you. The second week of observation was even more revealing than the first, and I was beginning to feel like a real private detective. Each day brought new evidence of what I was certain was a full-blown extramarital affair. On Monday of the second week, something different happened. The police officer arrived at the usual time of 2:30, but this time he brought 2 larger bags. One appeared to be from a fancy clothing store. The gold logo was visible even from a distance, and the other was clearly from a florist, because I could see the red flowers through the transparent paper. Red flowers, girls. Roses. From what I could tell, what man brings red roses to a married woman unless there's a very clear romantic intention? And gifts of clothes? The situation was becoming increasingly obvious and compromising. Maria opened the door wearing a dress I'd never seen before. It was new, probably one of the pieces he'd given her on previous visits. It was a royal blue midi dress, super elegant. The kind that costs a lot and makes any woman feel special. Her hair was tied back in an elegant bun, with a few loose strands framing her face, and she wore pearl earrings that sparkled in the afternoon sun. When she saw the flowers, her reaction was pure joy. She placed her hands on her chest, her eyes filled with tears of emotion, not sadness, and she threw herself into his arms right there at the door, not caring if anyone was watching. It was a passionate embrace, the kind we see in romantic movies. They stood there, embraced for almost a full minute, swaying back and forth, as if dancing to a song only they could hear. When they broke apart, he cupped her face in both hands and said something that made her smile in a way I'd never seen Maria smile before, not even at Roberto. Inside the house, the routine repeated itself. Curtains immediately drawn, romantic music after about 20 minutes, lights turning on and off in different rooms. But this time I noticed something new. Around 4 o'clock, I heard laughter coming from there. It wasn't ordinary laughter, it was intimate, complicit laughter, the kind that happens between people having a great time together. The visit lasted almost 4 hours that day. 4 hours. When he left at 6:15, I was in a panic because Roberto would be arriving in 15 minutes. How could Maria transform so quickly? But she pulled through, as always. When Roberto pulled into the driveway at 6:30, there she was at the door, dressed in home clothes, hair tied back, and no makeup. The only thing that betrayed the special afternoon she'd had were the red roses in a vase on the living room table. I could see them through the window when Roberto turned on the lights. He asked about the flowers. I could hear his voice from my kitchen because their window was open. Maria said something about having bought them to brighten up the house. A lie so natural that even I almost believed it. On Tuesday, I decided to change my observation strategy. Instead of staying just in the kitchen, I decided to vary my vantage points around the house to get different perspectives on the situation. I went to the front bedroom, which gave me a better view of their backyard. At 2:30, punctual as always, there he was. This time Maria was waiting for him at the gate, as if she couldn't wait inside any longer. She was wearing a blouse and skirt set that looked new too, probably another gift from him, in a shade of green that brought out her eyes strikingly. The greeting at the gate was even bolder. They kissed on the cheek, but lingeringly, intimately, and I clearly saw him whisper something in her ear that made her blush to the ears. She giggled awkwardly and covered her face with her hands, like a teenager who'd just heard something very raunchy. When they entered the house, I decided to try a bolder approach. I went to my backyard, pretended to water the plants, and listened for anything. Our fence is low, and if they were in the backyard or kitchen with the windows open, I would be able to pick up some sounds. And I did it, girls. Around 3:30, I heard his voice clearly. He was talking about work, something about a difficult case he was investigating, but his tone was relaxed, intimate, as if he were confiding in someone very close. Maria responded with loving, encouraging comments, as if she were a wife supporting her husband. This shocked me even more. They weren't just having a physical affair. There was emotional intimacy, too. They talked about life, shared work problems, and supported each other. It was a full-fledged relationship, not just physical attraction. Later, around 5 o'clock, I heard music again, but this time, it was more upbeat, danceable music. And guess what? I could hear them singing along, singing and laughing, like a couple in love, enjoying a special afternoon together. On Wednesday, something happened that nearly gave me a heart attack. I was at my observation post in the kitchen when, around 3 o'clock, I saw them appear in her backyard. They were walking hand in hand across the lawn, she pointing to the plants, he listening attentively and nodding. It looked like a couple strolling through the garden of their own home. The ease, the intimacy, the affectionate way they interacted. It was impossible to deny that something serious was going on there. At one point, they stopped near the back fence, right at the border of the vacant lot behind our houses, and he hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder as they admired the garden together. She leaned against him, relaxed, comfortable, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. They stayed like that for about 5 minutes, just enjoying each other's company, until she turned in his arms and, girls, I almost couldn't believe my eyes. They kissed. A real kiss on the lips, long, passionate, right there in the backyard, in the broad daylight. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint. It was the definitive confirmation of everything I'd suspected. There was no longer any doubt. Maria was cheating on Roberto with that police officer, and the relationship was serious, intense, and passionate. After the kiss, they walked back into the house hand in hand, smiling, as if they were the only two people in the world. The happiness on their faces was undeniable. They were two people completely in love, living an intense and forbidden romance. That night, I could barely sleep. I kept wondering if I should tell Roberto, if I should confront Maria, if I should simply pretend I didn't know anything. It was a huge responsibility to have that information. 3 people's lives were at stake, and I was right in the middle of it. On Thursday, I decided to make an even more detailed observation. I prepared a snack, settled comfortably in the living room, which afforded me a panoramic view of their home, and decided to document everything in minute detail. 2:25. He arrived 5 minutes early, as if eager to see her. Maria was already waiting for him at the living room window. I could see her silhouette behind the curtain, peering out. When the car parked, she ran to the door. This time she wore a beautiful printed dress with small flowers in shades of pink and white, and high-heeled sandals that made a lovely clicking sound when she walked. Her hair was loose, swinging over her shoulders, and she had a special glow on her face, as if she were radiant with happiness. The greeting was even more affectionate than the previous days. They hugged at the door for almost 30 seconds, rocking slowly, as if wanting to prolong the moment as much as possible. When they parted, he kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender and affectionate that even my heart ached. During the visit, which lasted more than 4 hours, I observed several interesting movements. Around 3:30, I saw them passing by the kitchen window, apparently preparing something together. He was behind her, his hands on her waist, directing some movement, probably teaching her a recipe or helping her cook. At 4 o'clock, I heard that familiar romantic music, but this time louder, more intense. And around 5, something happened that left me completely speechless. I saw them dancing in the living room. The curtain wasn't completely closed, and I could see their silhouettes moving slowly, pressed against each other, swaying to the rhythm of the music. It was a slow, romantic, intimate dance. She had her head resting on his chest. He had his hands on her back, lost in the music and in each other's company. It was at that moment that I realized this wasn't just a fling. It was a real relationship with deep feelings, emotional connection, and true intimacy. They were in love, genuinely in love, and living this forbidden love to the fullest. When Roberto arrived that night, I saw him with different eyes. Poor man, working all day to support the family, unaware that his wife was experiencing an overwhelming passion with another man right under his nose. He greeted Maria as always, affectionately but routinely, asked about her day, and helped set the table for dinner. Maria answered everything with impressive ease, telling her about the mundane things she'd done during the day, as if she'd actually spent the afternoon taking care of the house. Her ability to lie, to pretend, to maintain 2 parallel lives was frightening. How can a person compartmentalize their feelings like that? How can she passionately kiss a man in the afternoon and receive her husband naturally at night? Friday arrived and I was already completely addicted to that binge-watching routine. It was better than any soap opera on television because it was happening in real life, right in front of me. This time, something different happened. The police officer arrived at the usual time, but he brought a small suitcase with him. A suitcase? My God. Were they going to travel together? The situation was reaching a level I never imagined. Girls, we've reached the most tense moment of this whole story, and I guarantee you won't be able to stop watching now. What I discovered next completely changed my perspective on this whole situation. When I saw that suitcase in the officer's hands, my heart nearly stopped. It was a small, discreet weekend bag, but it clearly indicated they were planning to spend considerable time together. The betrayal was evolving to a whole new, dangerous level. Maria greeted him at the door with visible anxiety. She was wearing an outfit I'd never seen before, a black midi skirt and a white silk blouse that looked incredibly expensive. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant updo, with a few loose curls framing her face, and she wore more sophisticated makeup than usual, as if she'd prepared for a very special occasion. The greeting was different from all the others. Instead of the usual kiss on the cheek, he gave her a lingering kiss on the hand, like an old-time gentleman, and she blushed to the point of blushing. It was a romantic gesture, full of gallantry, that spoke volumes about the level of their relationship. When they entered the house with the suitcase, I was in a complete panic. Would they be traveling together for the weekend? How would Maria explain a prolonged absence to Roberto? What if Roberto came home to find the house empty? The situation was becoming untenable and dangerous. I decided I needed to better understand what was going on, so I moved to the front bedroom, which gave me a better view of the backyard and the side entrance to their house. From there, I could observe movements I couldn't see from the kitchen. Around 3 o'clock, something unexpected happened. I saw a catering van parked discreetly on the side street behind their house. 2 men got out and began unloading trays, platters, and what appeared to be a large, elaborate flower arrangement. They entered through the back door of Maria's house, as if everything had been planned down to the last detail. Catering? Why would Maria need catering on a Friday afternoon with her husband at work? Unless they were planning an intimate celebration, a special romantic date, something much more elaborate than the usual gatherings. My curiosity was at its peak. I decided to risk a bolder approach. I pretended I needed to check my mailbox, which is strategically positioned on the sidewalk, with a side view of their house, and walked slowly toward it, taking in every detail. I could hear music coming from the house, but it was different from other times. It was classical, instrumental, sophisticated music, and there was a delicious aroma in the air, as if someone was preparing a special gourmet meal. It wasn't the simple food Maria usually cooked for Roberto. I returned home even more intrigued and positioned myself at the bathroom window, which gave me a different view of their house. From there, I could see part of the dining room, and what I saw left me completely speechless. The table was set for 2, with a white tablecloth, lit candles, crystal glasses, and sophisticated dishes. A floral arrangement stood in the center of the table, red roses mixed with white flowers, and everything was arranged as if it were a romantic dinner at a 5-star restaurant. Around 4 o'clock, I saw them appear in the dining room. Maria had changed her clothes again and was now wearing an elegant black party dress, the kind you wear on very special occasions. She was beautiful, radiant, with a happiness on her face I'd never seen before, not even at her own wedding to Roberto. The police officer had also dressed up especially. He wore a dark suit, white shirt, and a discreet tie. He was impeccable, elegant, with the bearing of a man who knows how to impress a woman. They looked like a couple out for a special romantic date, not 2 people having a secret affair. They sat at the table and began what was clearly an elaborate romantic dinner. I could see them clinking glasses, chatting animatedly, laughing, and behaving like a loving couple celebrating a special occasion. The intimacy between them was palpable, even from afar. During dinner, which lasted over an hour, I witnessed numerous displays of affection. He held her hand across the table. She touched his face tenderly, and they leaned in for intimate conversations. It was a complete, romantic encounter, with all the pomp and circumstance a woman dreams of with the man she loves. Around 6 o'clock, something happened that made me understand the true gravity of the situation. They got up from the table and went into the living room, where they began dancing again. But this time, it wasn't a casual dance. It was a formal dance, as if it were a special celebration, a solemn and important moment for them. During the dance, I saw him take something small from his jacket pocket. My heart raced. Could he possibly be giving her a piece of jewelry? A ring. The position of their bodies didn't allow me to see exactly what it was, but from her reaction, her hands on her face, her wide eyes, an emotional embrace, it was clearly something very significant. It was at that moment that I realized the situation had gone beyond what I considered a typical extramarital affair. They weren't just having a side relationship. They were experiencing a great love, a true passion, complete with special celebrations, lavish gifts, and all the trappings of a serious relationship. At 6:15, I was in despair because Roberto would arrive in 15 minutes. How would they manage to dismantle this whole romantic pretense in such a short time? How would Maria transform back into the homely, unpretentious wife Roberto knew? But to my complete surprise, Roberto didn't arrive at his usual time. 6:30 passed, 7 o'clock passed, and the silver Honda Civic still hadn't pulled into the driveway. Where was he? Had Maria known he'd be late and arranged this special meeting? Around 7:30, I finally heard the sound of Roberto's car. I ran to the window to watch Maria's miraculous transformation, but this time, something completely unexpected happened. The officer didn't exit through the front door as he usually did. I saw him exit through the back door, carrying his suitcase, and walking quickly across the yard to a low fence that led to the vacant lot behind the houses. He had planned an alternate escape route. Meanwhile, Maria ran around the house like a madwoman, blowing out candles, putting away special dishes, and changing her clothes at an astonishing speed. In less than 5 minutes, she had dismantled the entire romantic scene and transformed herself into the housewife she always was. When Roberto walked home at 7:40, he found Maria in the kitchen preparing a simple dinner, wearing home clothes, her hair tied back, and no makeup. She greeted him normally, asked why he was late, and he explained something about having stayed late at the office to finish a project. But I noticed details Roberto didn't. The scent of expensive perfume still lingered in the air. A crystal goblet sat forgotten behind the potted plant in the living room, and Maria was slightly out of breath, as if she'd been running a long time, her cheeks flushed with nervousness. That night, I lay completely awake, replaying everything I'd seen. The situation had evolved into something far more complex and dangerous than I'd imagined. It wasn't just an affair. It was a full-fledged parallel relationship, complete with romantic rituals, special celebrations, and a level of planning and organization that indicated something very serious and long-lasting. On Saturday, I watched Roberto and Maria all day, looking for signs of tension, guilt, any clue that might reveal what was going on. But Maria was impeccable in her performance. She was affectionate with Roberto, prepared his favorite lunch, watched football together on television, and behaved like a devoted and loving wife. Roberto, for his part, was as normal as ever. He mowed the lawn, helped with the housework, and was affectionate with Maria. He showed no suspicion, no distrust. He was a man completely oblivious to the drama unfolding right under his nose. Sunday was the same. A normal couple, enjoying the weekend together, with no sign of the extraordinary events that had been happening during the week. Maria's ability to maintain 2 parallel lives was astonishing and disturbing. Monday arrived, and I was eager to see what the next visit would be like after that special romantic date on Friday. Would they stick to their usual routine, or would things evolve into something even more daring? At 2:30 sharp, there he was again. But this time, there was something different in the air. When Maria opened the door, they greeted each other with even greater intimacy, as if Friday's special encounter had sealed some kind of commitment between them. She wore a light blue dress that accentuated her eyes, and she was radiant, with a special glow on her face. On her finger, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. A different ring. It wasn't the wedding band she always wore. It was a new, delicate ring with a tiny stone that sparkled in the sun. Could it be possible he'd given her a ring on Friday? A promise ring? This was heading towards something I'd never imagined possible. They were making serious plans for their future together. During that visit, I noticed they spent more time in the backyard, talking seriously, their expressions focused. It wasn't just romance and passion anymore. There was planning, important discussions happening there. They were making decisions about something very serious. Around 5 o'clock, as the visit was ending, I witnessed a scene that left me completely shocked. They were at the door saying goodbye when a neighbor from across the street walked by with her dog. Maria and the police officer immediately stopped hugging and stood at a respectful distance, greeting the neighbor naturally. But what caught my attention was their perfect coordination. There was no hesitation, no nervousness. They knew exactly how to act when there was a possibility of being seen by others. This indicated that they had already discussed and planned these situations, that they had established rules and protocols to keep their relationship secret. After the neighbor passed by, they returned to their intimate behavior. But now I understood there was much more planning and strategy in that relationship than I'd imagined. They weren't just 2 people giving in to passion. They were 2 people carefully organizing a complex and elaborate parallel life. That night, I made a decision that would change the entire course of history. I decided I needed to find out more about that police officer, who he really was, where he worked. Was he married? Did he have children? Was there any way to learn more about him to better understand the whole situation? On Tuesday, instead of just observing, I decided to conduct a more active investigation. When the police officer arrived, I carefully noted the license plate. After he entered Maria's house, I discreetly left and tried to get a better look at the vehicle. It was a well-maintained gray sedan, with stickers indicating it was from a nearby town. During the visit, which followed the usual 3-hour pattern, I wondered how I could find out more about him. Perhaps I could discreetly ask other neighbors if anyone knew anything. Or perhaps I could seek out someone who worked in the police and could identify the man. But before I could put any plans into action, something completely unexpected happened on Wednesday that changed everything I thought I knew about the situation. On Wednesday, I was at my observation post when something happened that changed my entire perspective on this story. Around 2 o'clock, even before the police officer arrived, I saw Roberto arriving home early from work. My heart raced. He was going to catch Maria and the police officer together. I ran to the window, expecting to witness the biggest scandal in the neighborhood, when I saw something that left me completely speechless. Roberto parked in the garage, got out of the car, and instead of going straight home, he waited on the sidewalk, checking his watch, as if he were waiting for someone. At 2:30 sharp, the police officer arrived as usual. And then, girls, the unthinkable happened. Roberto walked up to his car with a smile on his face, and they greeted each other with a warm hug, like old friends reuniting. I was in total shock. Roberto knew the police officer. They talked for a few minutes on the sidewalk, laughing and chatting, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Then the three of them walked into the house together. Roberto, Maria, and the police officer. I was completely lost, trying to understand what was happening. All my theories about cheating were shattered in that moment. If Roberto knew the man, if they were friends, then what I had interpreted as an extramarital affair was what? Around 5 o'clock, when the three of them went out into the backyard, I could hear snippets of their conversation. And that's when I discovered the truth that changed everything. The officer was talking about his wife, who had been traveling in Europe for 3 weeks. Exactly how long I'd been observing the visits. He mentioned how he missed her home-cooked meals and having someone to talk to after work. That's when Maria said, "I'm glad you agreed to come have lunch here every day, Diego. You're my brother. I can't let you go hungry while Carmen is away." Brother! Girls, the police officer was Maria's brother. Brother! All those displays of affection, the lingering hugs, the kisses on the cheek. It was the genuine affection between siblings who hadn't seen each other in a long time and were taking the opportunity to catch up. The ring I saw on her finger? It was an heirloom from their mother that he'd brought with him, which was stored in the police station safe as evidence in an old case that had already been solved. The pretty clothes? Maria was getting ready because she was happy to welcome her brother and wanted to look presentable for him. The special Friday dinner? It was a celebration of their mother's death anniversary, so the romantic atmosphere was actually solemn and emotional. Roberto knew everything from the start. He'd arrived late because he'd stopped to pick up dessert or special wines for dinner with his brother-in-law. The escape route? Through the back? Diego simply preferred to leave that way to avoid disturbing anyone, since Roberto always arrived at that time. I had completely misinterpreted every gesture, every look, every situation. My gossipy imagination had transformed familial affection into forbidden passion, fraternal care into a clandestine romance. Girls, I was so ashamed of myself. For 3 weeks, I created an entire soap opera in my head, based on assumptions and misinterpretations. Maria wasn't cheating on Roberto. She was simply caring for her brother with the affection and dedication a sister has for her beloved sibling. In the end, the only scandalous thing about this whole story was my own exaggerated curiosity and my tendency to turn innocent situations into juicy gossip. So girls, like the video if you enjoyed this crazy story. Subscribe to the channel for more neighborhood gossip. I hope the next ones are truer than this one. And don't forget to download the amazing materials I pinned in the first comment. Let me know in the comments if you've ever been in a similar situation where you thought one thing was happening when it was completely different. And forgive me for having such a vivid imagination. I promise to try